Turning back to politics now, another shooting, another chance for the 2020 Democrats to step into the void created by Republicans around gun control. All of them advocating for some form of action this Labor Day weekend.
Don't know what the motivation is, do not yet know the firearms that were used or how they acquired them. But we do know this is up.
But we do know that it is time for politicians to act, to put common sense gun safety legislation into place.
But the answer is that Trump and the Republican leadership are intimidated by the NRA. That's about it. That's the whole deal.
We've been having great ideas for decades. The problem is that Congress has not had the courage to act. If they don't within the first 100 days of my administration, I'm going to take executive action.
Every one of them right on all those points. But interestingly, there are differences in how a few of the candidates approach the debate, typified by the two people who many would identify as frontrunners.
Do you see a compromise to be made with Republicans in Congress on guns that is short of expanded background checks?
I don't think I understand what that means.
Well, something, so it's, you know...
Could they agree to do some things and not that one? Look, that's part of what making legislation is all about.
Is there any compromise to be made with Republicans in Washington?
None on this. I think there's no compromise. This is one we have to just push, 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 and push, and push.
Everyone is back, and we have drawn into service Garrett Haake, who's been on the road covering the Odessa shooting, who's also covered Biden and Beto, two important voices in this. But we also showed you Senator Kamala Harris, Julian Castro, Bernie Sanders, all of them making points that it would appear have large swaths of the American public nodding their head in agreement. Democrats clearly have the public behind the things they're saying in the context of this presidential contest. Garrett.
Yeah, Nicole, I mean, I think that's right. I mean, look, you touched on this in the earlier block, the idea that expanded background checks alone get 90% support among the American people. You can't overstate how rare that is in our divided politics right now to get 90% support for anything at all. As I listen to those answers about compromise or not compromise, I'm going to, I think, tilt a little bit towards the former vice president's approach here, Biden's approach here on not being able to compromise through this with Republicans, just based purely on historical precedent here. I mean, there's a reason that these things have not been done in the past. And as, again, you touched on a little bit earlier, it's a shame because this does seem like the kind of thing in which this president, Donald Trump, is actually in a rare position here. He's such a non-traditional Republican. He is somebody who could break with the NRA and arguably would suffer very minimal political consequences himself and provide cover for Republicans. But if in 2021 we're looking at a Democratic-controlled White House, maybe a Democratic-controlled Senate, I do think this is something that Democrats are going to have to muscle through largely on their own because you'll see a Republican Party slip back into pure opposition mode. This president could provide cover, and he's not doing it.
You were in Odessa, Garrett. You've been covering this shooting all weekend. How are they doing?
It's tough. I met someone at the gym this morning who knew he was friends with one of the people who was shot in his car in front of his wife and child. I mean, this is a relatively small community. It's essentially a one-industry town. Everyone, pretty much everyone here is in the oil and gas business or supporting it in some capacity. Most people know someone who is affected by this if they weren't affected by it themselves. I've spoken to one of the victims this morning in the hospital behind me, the luckiest person, if you can describe somebody as lucky, who was shot twice with an assault rifle. He was lucky because he was only hit in the leg, managed to survive. It was interesting because we talked a lot about what that was like and his feelings after the shooting, but I also asked him to weigh in a little bit on the politics of it, and he was sort of fatalistic. He said, maybe we do more background checks, maybe there's something else to get rid of these guns. I don't know if it's going to make much of a difference. I mean, there's this feeling of, as we've talked about on, I think, this program before, there are really just two types of communities when it comes to these kinds of shootings, those who have had them happen and those who will have them happen. And there does seem to be this fatalistic sense that this is the America we live in now.
A.B. Stoddard, Garrett has spent a lot of time covering Beto. Beto has his best and brightest moments when he's doing two things. One, for better or for worse, dropping an F-bomb at a moment when it's the only thing that adequately describes how screwed up something is. And two, when he's responding like a human being to a tragedy in his own state.
Yeah, I think that these two tragedies have given him an opportunity, since he's also no longer in Congress, to really, blanket the state and talk to people affected by this and speak solely to this issue with great passion and stand out because he's from Texas. I don't know if the F-bombs are necessary. I don't know if the T-shirts with the F-bombs are necessary. But candidates like to make T-shirts after they say something that goes viral. I think that he is also still missing one component of the messaging that we've talked about on your show before, which is that none of the Democrats seem to be telling voters how essential it is that they get a majority in the Senate. This is really something they need to translate to voters, that if even one poll I saw showed 93% support for universal background checks, 73% support for voluntary buyback, high support for banning semi-automatics. Having a conversation with voters about the NRA and its stranglehold on the Congress, that voters need to become single-issue voters on gun control, just like gun rights voters are single-issue advocates and go to the polls simply on this issue, that they have to help each other register voters and they need to make a difference in the Senate races, and that really becomes the threat to a Republican gridlock on this issue and to President Trump retreating and cowing to the NRA. That is really what needs to happen, besides just talking about how Mitch McConnell won't put a bill on the floor.
Elise, I think that the last 6 months have done what AB just described. I think it has torqued this issue around the other way. And I actually think that all of the sort of groundwork that was laid, we saw the fruits of some of it in 2018. The Parkland kids had an effect. There were people that went out and voted on that issue. But I think that being in the pocket of the NRA is the default Republican position, not advocating for lawful gun owners. That is not what Trump and McConnell are doing, because what lawful gun owners want is buyback programs, is background checks, is red flag laws. I think Democrats have a real opportunity to turn this issue around on Republicans.
And I think that they've started to. I agree with your analysis that we're seeing traction right now that we haven't seen in previous cycles.
On gun control.
I really do think that the Parkland kids ignited a movement that is sustaining and that has expanded, that got their parents engaged, that registered so many voters at every rally they had. And these kids are going to grow up, and from all signs that I can see from following their movement, they're still continuing it. And you look at 2018 and the impact in midterms, and the joke that every district that had a Whole Foods flipped and turned Democrat, and those educated women who were a big part of that, doesn't seem like they're going to suddenly be like, yeah, I want free gun, I want completely unfettered gun regulation, no gun regulation in the country.
Real quick.
No, I think that is right. I think this is a prime moment for Democrats here.
Yeah.
I think the country is seemingly behind this, and whether it's former Congressman O'Rourke or someone else, someone steps to the forefront, this could be a real powerful winning issue for them.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.